While I was out for work over the weekend, my wife was at home with our daughter, but I got off early and returned to find wife's work husband living in our home, and my daughter was calling him her real daddy, so I packed my bags, grabbed my daughter and left. On my way, I took a detour to my Mills place and showed these docs wife was hiding, and oh boy, I didn't know my one move could ruin her whole life. I've been married to my wife for 8 years, and for most of that time, I thought we had a stable and happy life. We have a 6-year-old daughter who means the world to me. I work as a pediatric nurse at a major hospital in our city, which means I have long hours, especially on weekends. My wife is a corporate lawyer at a prestigious firm, and her job also keeps her busy. I figured we were just like any other couple, juggling the responsibilities of work, parenting, and marriage. I was wrong. 3 weeks ago, my entire life was turned upside down. It started on a Saturday when I was scheduled to work a 12-hour shift. Due to some staffing changes, I was released early, which was a rare treat. I didn't tell my wife I'd be home early, thinking I'd surprise her and our daughter. Lately, my little girl had been asking for more daddy time, and I was excited to spend the extra hours with her. When I pulled into the driveway around 2 p.m., I noticed an unfamiliar car parked in front of our house. I didn't think much of it at first. My wife sometimes had colleagues over for work, even on weekends. But as I walked up to the door, I heard laughter. A man's laughter mixed with my daughter's giggles. My heart sank, but I tried to push the feelings away, telling myself it was probably nothing. I opened the door, and what I saw made my stomach drop. There was a man probably in his early 30s sitting on the floor with my daughter. They were surrounded by her toys, and he was wearing my apron like he had been cooking. My wife was sitting on the couch looking relaxed, as if this was a normal Saturday afternoon for them. But it wasn't normal, not for me. My daughter ran over to me, but instead of her usual, "Daddy," she said something that hit me like a punch to the gut. "Look, real daddy is teaching me how to build a robot." She was talking about this man, this stranger, as if he was her father. I stood there in shock, my mind racing to catch up with what was happening. My wife jumped up, clearly caught off guard by my arrival. She stammered something about how Sam, yes Sam, her so-called work husband, was staying with us temporarily because of issues with his apartment. She mentioned water damage and insurance problems, but I wasn't really listening. All I could focus on was the scene in front of me. My daughter, who I loved more than anything, was acting like this man was part of our family. Then I saw the suitcases. They were half hidden behind the couch, but I could see enough to know what was going on. These weren't suitcases packed for a short stay. They were unpacked with clothes spilling out. Men's clothes, Sam's clothes. He wasn't just visiting, he was living in my home. I felt like I was in a fog. I don't even remember what I said next, but I know I walked upstairs to our bedroom, grabbed a suitcase and started packing my things. My wife followed me trying to explain, but her words barely registered. She kept saying I was overreacting, that Sam's situation was temporary, but nothing made sense to me anymore. How long had this been going on? How long had this man been in my house pretending to be my daughter's father? What my wife didn't know was that 2 weeks earlier I had already found something suspicious. I was looking for some tax documents in her office when I stumbled upon a folder filled with papers she had clearly been hiding. There were bank statements showing regular transfers to an unknown account dating back almost a year. There were also documents about a property purchase I knew nothing about. But the worst part were the emails between her and Sam discussing their future plans. I had taken pictures of everything, planning to confront her after my shift that weekend. I never expected to find him in my house when I came home early. I packed my daughter's things while my wife stood there trying to convince me I was being irrational, but I had already made up my mind. I was done. I couldn't stay in a home where my wife had been living a double life, and I certainly wasn't going to let my daughter be a part of it either. My daughter was confused, crying as I got her into the car. She kept asking why we couldn't stay with real daddy any longer, and each word felt like a knife in my heart. How had this happened? How had my wife allowed this man to become so close to our daughter that she didn't even know who her real father was anymore? I didn't go far at first. Instead of heading to the hotel like I had planned, I drove to my mother-in-law's house. She and I had always had a good relationship, and I needed someone to talk to. I also knew that she had gone through something similar with my wife's father years ago. When I arrived at her house, I broke down and showed her the documents I had found. I showed her the bank statements, the property purchase agreement, and the emails between my wife and Sam. Her face went from shock to anger as she looked through the papers. Then she told me something that made everything worse. The property my wife had bought with Sam wasn't just any property. It had been purchased using money from her trust fund. A trust fund that had been set up for our family with strict conditions about how the money could be used. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. Not only had my wife been cheating on me with her work husband, but she had used money meant for our family to build a life with him. My mother-in-law was furious, and I could see the pain in her eyes as she realized what her daughter had done. The next few days were a blur. I checked into a hotel with my daughter paying in cash so my wife couldn't track us. I contacted a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague, someone who was known for handling high-profile cases discreetly. I also filed for emergency custody of my daughter, documenting everything I had discovered, how my wife and Sam had encouraged my daughter to call him real daddy, and the financial deception and the emotional manipulation that had been going on behind my back. As the days passed, the messages from my wife and her friends started flooding in. They were all saying the same thing: that I was being unfair, that I was overreacting, that I shouldn't take our daughter away from her mother just because of a mistake. Some of them even accused me of trying to turn my mother-in-law against her, using her to get what I wanted, but none of them understood what I had been through. None of them knew what it felt like to come home and find another man living in your house, playing father to your child and most probably a husband to your own wife. I know I'm not wrong. I know that as a father I have to protect my daughter from people who would manipulate her, from a father who has shown she cares more about her affair than her family. But sometimes because of all the pressure I question myself. Am I being too harsh? Am I really doing the right thing by keeping my daughter away from her mother? I don't know the answer and maybe I never will. All I know is that I have to fight for my daughter, for her future and for my own sanity. But I can't help but wonder, am I wrong for taking this stand? Should I have given my wife another chance? Should I have let her explain? But how can I forgive someone who has shattered the trust we built over 8 years? How can I stay in a marriage where I'm not even sure who my wife is anymore? Update 1. The fallout from my visit to my mother-in-law happened faster than I ever imagined. I thought it would take some time, but she didn't waste a single minute after I handed her those documents. She went straight to the trust fund administrator showing them the proof of what my wife had done. For some of you asking about this, basically as much as I know, the trust fund wasn't something she could spend however she wanted. It had strict rules about how it could be used. It was supposed to be for family obligations like making sure our daughter had everything she needed, but using that money to buy a house with her affair partner? That crossed a major line. As soon as the administrators saw the documents, they froze the entire trust fund. Every penny was locked up until they could investigate further. And because of some legal requirements, my wife's law firm had to be informed too. This opened up a whole new problem. Her and Sam had been working together for a while but they never told HR about their relationship, which was against company policy. Since they were having an affair and working in the same office, it raised a lot of questions about conflicts of interest. The firm started its own investigation and I could tell from the way things were going that my wife's career was now hanging by a thread. On my end, my attorney moved fast. Within days of filing for emergency custody, I was granted a temporary order that gave me primary custody of our daughter. The judge was very concerned about the situation, especially when I showed them evidence of how Sam and my wife had encouraged my daughter to call him real daddy. The judge said that was a clear sign of parental alienation, and given my daughter's age it was a huge issue. It was obvious to the court that my daughter was being manipulated and that weighed heavily in my favor. Meanwhile my wife was calling and texting non-stop. She was all over the place. One minute she was furious accusing me of blowing things out of proportion and the next she was begging for me to come home and fix everything. She kept saying Sam was just a friend helping her out because he had problems with his apartment. She claimed that buying the property together was purely a business deal, nothing more. But I had seen the bank transfers, the documents and the emails. They weren't just investing in a property, they were planning a future together, one that clearly didn't include me. As if that wasn't enough, friends and family started reaching out to me too. I was flooded with calls and messages from people telling me how upset my wife was about being away from our daughter. They said she was heartbroken, missing her little girl and that she was falling into a deep depression because of the separation. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something strange. She never mentioned our daughter in any of her calls or messages to me. Not once. All of her texts were focused on herself, on how she felt, on how unfair it was to her. She didn't say anything about missing bedtime stories or playing with our daughter in the mornings. It was like she was more concerned about how things affected her than what this whole mess was doing to our child. It was painful to come to terms with that. I had spent years trusting her, thinking she was always doing what was best for our family. I had been so busy working long shifts and taking care of everything at home that I didn't see the signs. And now I couldn't help but feel like she had checked out of our marriage long before I ever realized it. She had been slowly creating a life without me, making plans behind my back and involving our daughter in those plans without my knowledge. The investigation into the trust fund kept moving forward and from what my lawyer told me, it didn't look good for my wife. If it was proven that she had misused the money, she could face serious legal consequences. The trust wasn't just some casual fund she could dip into whenever she wanted. It had very specific rules about how the money could be spent. It was meant to be used for family obligations and buying a house with her affair partner was definitely not on that list. My mother-in-law was furious when she found out, not just because of the money but because of how she had lied to all of us. She had been in a similar situation with my wife's father years ago and I think seeing her daughter follow in those footsteps hurt her deeply. Things at her law firm weren't going well either. The internal investigation uncovered their relationship and because they hadn't told HR, it was a big deal. Her job was now on the line and from what I was hearing, she was on indefinite leave while they figured out what to do. Her career, which she had worked so hard for, was now in jeopardy because of her own choices. Despite everything, there were moments when I wondered if I was doing the right thing. Was it really fair to keep my daughter away from her mother even after all that had happened? There were moments when I saw my daughter's face light up during the supervised visits with her dad and it tugged at my heart. They still had a bond no matter how much I wanted to protect my daughter from the hurt and confusion of this whole situation. I couldn't deny that my wife was still her mother. Watching them together even in those short monitored visits made me question if I was being too harsh. Was I punishing my wife in a way that would also end up hurting my daughter? Hell, I started to wonder if my daughter was even mine. But then I would remember everything my wife had done, all the lies, all the deceit and how she had tried to replace me in our daughter's life. That's when the doubt would fade away and I would feel more confident in my decision. As much as my wife and her friends tried to make me feel guilty, I knew deep down that I wasn't wrong for wanting to protect my child. I wasn't the one who had destroyed our family. She was. Still, it was hard not to feel the pressure from everyone around me. My wife started telling people that I was turning her own mother against her and that I was making it impossible for her to rebuild her relationship with our daughter. She tried to spin the story painting herself as the victim, and I could tell some people were starting to buy into it. They thought I was being too cold, too unforgiving, and that maybe I should just let things go for the sake of our child. But every time I started to doubt myself, I would think about my daughter and what kind of example I wanted to set for her. I wanted her to know that it was okay to stand up for yourself, that it was okay to demand respect even from the people you love the most. So while my wife continued to spiral, losing her grip on both her career and her finances, I focused on what mattered, keeping my daughter safe and giving her the stability she needed during this chaotic time. I wasn't going to let my wife's bad decisions drag us down any further. Update 2. The situation at my wife's firm has gotten much worse. What began as an investigation into her relationship with Sam has turned into something much bigger. More employees started coming forward with stories about my wife and Sam acting inappropriately at office events. They were not as careful as they thought. People noticed that they were getting too close at work parties and company retreats, and rumors had been going around for a while. The worst part was the accusations of favoritism. Several employees reported that Sam was being pushed forward for partnership consideration even though he had much less experience than others. It looked bad, especially since he and my wife never told HR about their relationship, which was against company rules. My wife had a lot of power over case assignments, and it became clear that Sam was getting the best ones, the kinds that could help him career a lot. Other associates were upset but were quiet about it until the investigation started. Now, both my wife and Sam have been put on administrative leave while the firm looks into everything. My attorney has been able to get information from HR, which is helping with my case. The firm is worried about legal issues because some client funds were tied to the property my wife and Sam bought together. The HR department is cooperating fully, providing documents that could be very important for my divorce. They realize that the relationship and the property purchase could get them into serious trouble. On the family front, my mother-in-law has been a surprising source of support. I never thought we would be this close given the situation, but she's been there for me and my daughter every step of the way. She is angry with my wife for bringing shame to the family. After everything she went through with her father years ago, she's doing everything she can to support me. She helps with my daughter, who is confused and sad. She knows something is wrong, but she doesn't understand the full picture. My daughter has started seeing a child psychologist who knows a lot about parental alienation. This has been very helpful. The therapist noticed troubling patterns in how my wife and Sam were influencing my daughter's feelings about me while I was at work. They were subtly making her think I wasn't around for her and that Sam was more of a mother figure. It's heartbreaking to think they were doing this. The therapist explained that this could affect my daughter in the long run if we didn't deal with it quickly. I'm grateful we caught it early and can work to fix her perception of me as her dad. Meanwhile, the trust fund investigation uncovered even more problems. It seems that the property's purchase with Sam was just the start. There were multiple financial issues that violated the trust's rules. My wife made some questionable investments and started undisclosed business ventures with Sam without telling anyone. The more the trustees looked, the worse it got. Now they are working to take away her access to the trust fund completely, which would have a big impact on her finances. It's hard to understand how much my wife has kept from me. I thought I knew her well, but each new piece of information showed me how little I actually understood. The fact that she risked our family and her career for this affair is shocking. She has been calling me and texting non-stop trying to downplay everything. She kept saying I was overreacting and that Sam was only a close friend, but the evidence is clear and I don't believe her anymore. I have stopped replying to her messages. There's nothing left to say. She tries to blame me, saying I was too focused on my career and not enough on her, but that's just another excuse. I know her choices are her own and now she has to deal with what she has done. As for Sam, I have no idea what he's thinking. I've heard he's been keeping a low profile, hoping that this will blow over, but I doubt it will. His career is also in jeopardy, and with the investigation looking closely at their finances, he is in trouble too. I can't help but wonder if he regrets being involved with my wife, especially with everything happening, but honestly, I don't care. He knew she was married and that she had a child and he chose to be a part of this anyway. I don't feel sorry for him. Through all of this, I've learned that people can surprise you both positively and negatively. I never thought my mother-in-law would become such a great support for me, but she has stepped up in ways I didn't expect. Meanwhile, my wife's friends have reached out trying to defend her. They tell me she's really upset about being away from our daughter, but they don't understand that she has done this to herself. They don't know how she's been acting or the evidence I have. My focus now is on my daughter and healing. I want to ensure he knows I'm her father no matter what anyone else says. I've been working hard to keep things stable for her and I hope that in time she can see the truth of what's happening. I'm still not sure where all of this will lead us, but I know I need to protect my daughter and myself from the damage my wife and Sam have caused. As each day passes, I wonder how this will all play out. I know the road ahead will be tough, but I'm determined to fight for my family and my daughter's future. At least I have you guys to guide me through this. Update 3. Everything has truly fallen apart for my wife, and the consequences of her actions are much bigger than even I expected. The law firm officially completed their investigation, and both my wife and Sam have been fired. What they uncovered was far more than just a personal relationship between them. It turns out that they had been using company resources, including confidential client information, to help with their personal business ventures. This is a massive ethical violation and the firm wasn't going to take it lightly. It was enough to not only cost them their jobs but also alert the State Bar Association. Now the Bar Association has launched its own investigation into their actions. This could lead to my wife and Sam losing their law licenses altogether. It's one thing to lose a job, but losing the ability to practice law could ruin their careers for good. Several clients whose confidential information was compromised have already been notified, and 2 of them are considering filing formal complaints. If they go through with it, my wife and Sam could be facing serious legal consequences on top of everything else. The situation with the trust fund has also been settled. My wife's access to the trust has been permanently revoked. After the trustees reviewed the evidence, it was clear that she had been violating the conditions of the trust for over a year. She'd been secretly diverting funds and trying to cover her tracks with financial tricks, but it wasn't enough to hide what she'd been doing. The remaining money in the trust will now be held for our daughter's future, but my wife no longer has any control over it. This means she's lost not only her career but also her financial safety net. I can't imagine what she's feeling right now, but again, these are consequences she brought on herself. As for Sam, I've heard he's moved out of our house. He's apparently gone back to his apartment, the one that he'd claimed had water damage. It turns out that was a lie too. His apartment was never damaged at all. That was just another cover story he and my wife made up so he could stay with us. It's unbelievable how many layers of deception there were, but Sam's problems are far from over. The firm's investigation also found that he'd been leaking client information to competitors. He might have been trying to secure a job somewhere else before everything came crashing down. Now he's facing legal trouble of his own, and I can't say I feel bad for him. My daughter has been doing better lately. She's still seeing the child psychologist regularly, and the therapy is helping her understand that what happened wasn't her fault. The psychologist has been working with her to reverse the emotional damage caused by my wife and Sam. They've been trying to make her think of Sam as her real daddy, but now she's starting to realize that wasn't right. It's been slow progress, but she's back to calling me daddy again. It broke my heart to hear her struggle with that, but I'm glad she's starting to heal. She still has nightmares sometimes and she's developed separation anxiety. But I'm hopeful that with time, she'll recover fully. On the legal side, the divorce is moving faster than I expected. My attorney has been amazing. He's confident that I'll get primary custody, especially with all the documentation we have about parental alienation and my wife's lies. The financial part of the divorce will be more complicated though. With the trust fund situation and the mess at her job, there are a lot of moving parts. But my attorney is making sure that my daughter's future will be secure no matter what happens to my wife financially. I want to make sure my daughter is protected from any fallout from this disaster. My mother-in-law has been a rock through all of this. I never expected us to become so close, especially given how things started between us, but she's been on my side every step of the way. She's even helping me look for a new house in a better school district for my daughter. She told me that she doesn't want to see history repeat itself, referring to her own experience with infidelity. She's using her own personal funds to help me make a fresh start. I'm so grateful to her. It's been nice to have someone who understands what I'm going through and who wants to help. When I look back, it's hard to believe how much has come from my decision to stop by her house that day. What started as me confronting my wife's betrayal has spiraled into the exposure of years of deceit and professional misconduct. I didn't expect my actions to uncover so many layers of lies, but here we are. It's overwhelming at times, but I'm trying to stay focused on healing and creating a stable life for my daughter. One of the biggest lessons I've learned from all of this is to trust my instincts. The documents I found were shocking, but in reality, the signs were there long before that. I just didn't want to see them. Now I know better. I'll never ignore my gut feelings again. Going forward, I'm committed to building a life where my daughter grows up understanding what a healthy relationship looks like. I want her to know that honesty and respect are the most important things in any relationship, and I'm determined to teach her that by example. My wife's final message to me still rings in my ears: "You've ruined my life." But I don't see it that way. I didn't ruin anything. She made her own choices. She chose to lie, to cheat, to manipulate. She ruined her own life with every bad decision she made. I'm just the one who brought it all to light. She wants to blame me because it's easier than accepting responsibility, but deep down she knows that this is her doing. I still get messages from some of her friends telling me that I should try to work things out for the sake of our daughter, or that I've been too harsh, but I don't believe that for a second. What she did was beyond repair. She didn't just betray me. She betrayed our family. She involved our daughter in her deception, and that's something I'll never forgive. I'm standing firm in my decision to end this marriage, and I won't let anyone make me feel guilty about it. Now my focus is on the future. I'm ready to leave the past behind and start fresh. I want my daughter to grow up in a home filled with love, trust, and stability. I can't change what happened, but I can control what happens next. And that's exactly what I plan to do.